So how did Xavi Hernández manage to produce a masterclass against Real Madrid in the Spanish Super Cup final? And that is what we're going to be answering for today, is exactly what Xavi did in order for Barcelona to win 3-1. Now, there has been a lot of tactical things that Xavi did within the field, but I'm going to be pointing out the most important ones, and I'm happy to hear what all of you guys do have to say in the comment sections down below on what exactly you liked that Xavi Hernández did tweak within the system. Because what I am going to be talking about here in this video is things that we did not expect to see coming from FC Barcelona, which is why it's so important to talk about, because we want to build on top of this, and also we want to make this as another weapon, another source of material within our arsenal in case we do face other different oppositions that do require this specific tactical tweak, or in other words, the weapon. So like I have always said, when it comes to FC Barcelona, looking at this performance, this is the beginning, my friends, of how Barcelona is going to be presenting themselves across Europe. And I'm very confident that they can do this consistently, because you look at the energy that these players have shown against Real Madrid, they can definitely do it. So let's talk about how Xavi managed to produce this masterclass. Point number one, he switched Pedri and Gavi. So Gavi was playing on the left side of the pitch while Pedri was playing on the right side. But why is the question? That is because Xavi knew that Gavi was much more superior in defense, and especially when the players are wide open. Xavi knew that Carvajal and Modric were going to be the most dangerous on Barcelona's left side, because they do play on the right side of Real Madrid, which is why he sent Gavi on the left to defend Carvajal, to defend Modric, and it was successful. Because Gavi was on the left, he came out as the player with the most duels won, with a total of 10, because again, he minimized what Modric was trying to do. He minimized what Carvajal was trying to do. On the other side, Real Madrid also had Mendy, and they also had Camavinga, but they weren't as dangerous as Carvajal and Modric. And Xavi Hernández said, okay, look, I can place Pedri on the left side, but if we want the best defensive reinforcement, I have to send Gavi on that side. And we can see the examples here. You can see that Gavi was always anticipating when Modric was about to receive. He pressures Modric and he loses the ball. The same thing went with Carvajal. Carvajal receives the ball and Gavi chases Carvajal down, and he barely gets any chances. So what a great tweak that Xavi has made. Let's move on towards point number two. Barcelona wanted to wear Real Madrid out from the back, and so let's talk about this. This is going to be one of the most important ones. They basically were trying to foreplay with Real Madrid by overpassing in their own half to eventually get higher up the pitch. So we saw Christensen, Koundé, Araujo, Balde, sometimes Busquets, Frankie just overpassing in their half. And Real Madrid knew at the back of their heads that the game was going to be won in the midfield, which is why they always anticipated for the ball to eventually get into the hands of Pedri and Gavi, which is why we saw Real Madrid be very compact and they barely covered the wide areas. There is going to be a picture here so you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about, because this is going to become very visual. So Barcelona saw this as a advantage. They're like, okay, if Real Madrid are going to be very compact, if they're too afraid to open up and to cover the wings, let's use our wingers to receive the ball so we can go higher up the pitch. It's a win-win situation for FC Barcelona. So that is why we saw sometimes Araujo be wide open to receive the ball. Sometimes we saw Dembélé also receive the ball, and because sometimes Araujo was open, that allowed Dembélé to receive the ball from Araujo. So again, Barcelona saw this as a huge advantage, and Real Madrid had to play the guessing game because they were in a trap. They're like, okay, what are we going to do here? Are we going to compact the midfield so players like Frankie and Busquets cannot receive the ball, or are we going to cover the wide areas? Again, this was all in Xavi Hernández's plan. Real Madrid had to choose who to defend, and just looking at how Madrid were set up, they were afraid to let Frankie and Busquets go and go wider to cover up Dembélé or Araujo or sometimes even Alejandro Balde. And so let's make this very clear, because again, I want to make this very visual and I want you guys to just understand the type of trap Xavi has made. Valverde, Benzema, and Vinicius, right? The front three of Real Madrid, they were occupied and they had to cover the passing lanes of Christensen, Koundé, and Araujo. They were not going to go up there and pressure these three center backs. They just stood in their ground to cover up the passing lane of these three players. So now the front three of Real Madrid were occupied. They're out of the picture. Now let's move on towards the next lane. Busquets and Frankie. Those were the next two players that Madrid were worried about. So they sent Modric and Kroos within their zones to cover up Busquets and Frankie. So now Barcelona has taken Modric and Kroos out of the picture, and now that leaves Camavinga on Pedri. So now Camavinga is also out of the picture. So you look at this whole thing and you can see that Barcelona has taken out almost the whole front three and the midfield of Madrid only because they were so busy occupying the midfield. And one of the reasons on why Mendy did not even stay close to Dembélé, which we can see, it is because he was afraid to let Camavinga go by himself against Pedri, which allowed Mendy to stay compact and in the midfield and right behind Camavinga and also Pedri in case something were to happen there. And sometimes we did see Pedri receive the ball no matter what because of Ter Stegen's great passing. But again, the end conclusion of this was for Dembélé to receive the ball ball eventually, which is why he was so open. Now, what Dembele did with the ball is a whole other story. That was basically like, again, the conclusion. They were out to Real Madrid. They were overpassing. Madrid were busy. They were getting dizzy. They're like, oh my God, like we're being compacted, but we can barely get the ball. And they just forget about the wide areas. And that is why Barcelona found no trouble always finding options to play out from the back. Barcelona were free. This is also another reason why Ter Stegen was never really used in this game, is because Barcelona had no trouble playing with the ball at the back and to play all the way to the front. They did not need the goalkeeper at all because Madrid were just left clueless. And this is going to transition us towards the last key point, which will be key point number 3. Gavi and Pedri. Gavi, Pedri, and sometimes Frankie were the ones to be called up to be the free man on the pitch and to always look for those open spaces. That was basically everything that Barcelona were trying to do and what Xavi Hernández wanted. That is how Barcelona won this game. And so let's talk about it. This basically meant that Xavi Hernández wanted the Real Madrid players to step in and go higher up in order for one of the players like Pedri or Gavi to receive the ball. This is what's so brilliant about this formation and this setup, is to have that 3-2-2-3 and to dominate the midfield. If the opposition does not let Barcelona dominate the midfield, they go into the wide areas. But when they did not go wide, when Barcelona did not pass it to Dembele or Araujo, and then we had players like Pedri or Gavi receive, that is where things really did get dangerous. And especially when players like Busquets or Frankie also received. So players like Camavinga, Carvajal, Cruz fell into another trap every time they did step in, because that is where Barcelona found the free man. And let's look at the pictures here so you guys can see exactly what we are talking about. You can see that Cruz steps in to defend Sergio Busquets. Then you can see that Frankie de Jong right behind Cruz becomes the free man. Frankie receives the ball, Carvajal gets worried, he steps in yet again, and then Gavi becomes the free man, and that is how Barcelona ended up scoring the second goal. You see how perfect everything ended up working? We look at the next frame here, we can see Lewandowski making Carvajal yet again step in, open up the space behind him, and then having Gavi go into that open space, and now Gavi automatically becomes the free man. We look at the next frame here, we can see Busquets having the ball. Then Camavinga has a choice. He's like, okay, do I step in or do I stay here? Do I cover the zones? What do I do here? And you can just see Pedri waiting within that box of Madrid, and again just becoming that free man on the right side. Pedri knew that he could just wait there because eventually a player like Camavinga was going to step in and just allow all of the space in the world. And that is one of the reasons on why within this play Barcelona almost did score and was able to pass it to a player like Dembele. And so everything worked out so perfectly. We can go on and talk about other things, like for example Frankie being right next to Sergio Busquets, how Frankie does benefit from this. It did work also extremely well because they do cover each other's weaknesses, because Frankie's able to be right next to Sergio Busquets and create that double pivot that Xavi Hernández has given permission to. Frankie is allowed to go up. Frankie is allowed to be himself and to be that versatile player, to be that player that can defend, to be that player that can also attack. One of the main reasons on why Barcelona even won this game is because Frankie de Jong was influential. So everybody played so well. And I want to give everybody the credit for what Barcelona have done. Like for example, the only reason why Frankie and Busquets were able to receive that ball so quickly is because Koundé and Christensen were so sharp on their passes. If we had center backs that could not really pass, the game plan would have been over. But because we have exactly what Xavi needs from his center backs, they were able to implement their style efficiently and effectively. So I hope you guys did enjoy this video. Thank you guys so much for joining in. Welcome to this Barcelona family, and I will see you guys in the next one.